Good afternoon. There in the Vatican City, Mr. Sabastian Eviota. No, so first and foremost, congratulations for being the first full-blooded Filipino Swiss Guard. So, Sebastian, how does it feel to be a Swiss Guard?
Thank you, first of all. For me, it's a very big honor to be able to serve in the Swiss Guard, especially being at the center point of the Catholic faith. It's just an amazing opportunity for me to serve the Pope in this way, to protect him, first of all, also just serve the Catholic faith.
What made you decide to be a Swiss Guard?
What made me decide was especially my faith. There is a part where I had my military service, which was also a big part in me considering to become a Swiss Guard. But of course, my faith was also one of the things that really put those things together and made me decide to join the Swiss Guard.
Wow.
I grew up liking the military, actually, like loving it during my service there in the Swiss Army. But during the pandemic, when my faith grew, that's when I realized that the Swiss Guard was something for me.
Yeah. Speaking of faith, Sebastian, I mean, we can all have platforms, or we can choose anything when it comes to our faith, when it comes to serving God, specifically in fulfilling our duties for Him. We can be priests, we can be other church servants, but why did you decide to be in the military and to choose being a Swiss Guard in order to serve God?
It's a good question. The reason why I chose the Swiss Guard, and before that, I actually was thinking of doing another service in terms of going to Kosovo to help there with the Swiss Guard detachment, or otherwise being able to be deployed somewhere in an area of conflict. I discerned for all those things, but in the end, that's what made the Swiss Guard the turning point for me, was that it had to do with my faith, which is very important for me. Growing up with my faith, it has been a big part of my life, growing up in a community with like-minded people, and then mixing it up with a militaristic form of life when I served in the army, in the Swiss Army. Of course, all those things put together really just made a big impact on me deciding to be a Swiss Guard. So I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah.
Now let's take us back to your childhood. What was like during your childhood? I mean, are you from a family of military men? I do believe that you came from a family of, devoted family back in Mindanao. So how was it during your childhood that molded you into who you are right now?
Yes, good question. My childhood, when I was in the Philippines, I remember always being in the living room with my grandfather, and back when he was still alive, and we would always watch war documentaries, especially from World War II. That's something that we always love to do. And I remember just watching one of those documentaries and then seeing all those things happen during the Second World War. I became very interested in the military. And after that, I always had that wish, that sense of calling to become a soldier. And so through the Swiss Army, I was able to do that. And of course, with that being said, I served longer than usual in the Swiss Army.
How long?
I stayed there for about a year and a half.
Okay.
And with the repetition courses in total, we could also say 2 years. And I usually ranked up until second lieutenant in the army. And that in itself requires a lot of focus of willingness to serve other people, of dedication to the job. And that's something that I would always wanted to be able to have in a job like I did in the Swiss Army, to have that responsibility on you to be able to lead other people and to uh, make something out of the experience that you get.
Yeah. Was your grandfather a former military man as well?
He wasn't officially a military uh, personnel, but he was a former judge,
Okay.
and he was very interested um, in military documentaries and everything basically about military, about army. You could say that he was very into it. So first, when he found out that I became a Swiss Guard, he was very, very happy for that.
Wow. And your parents were journalists, right? As wow,
Yes.
that's interesting. Now let's just give us a glimpse of the training that you had to go through before entering the Swiss Guard.
Mhm. So when you want to enter the Swiss Guard, you need to attain certain requirements from the Swiss Guard. So, of course, you have to be of Swiss nationality. You have to have served in the Swiss Army for at least the basic training, so 4 months, and then you have to have at least a high school diploma or maturity, as we say it in Switzerland, and then the preferred height would be 1 meter and 74 centimeters. So that's like 5'8", 5'9" in feet. And I think all those things together, it really just makes you prepared, especially having to have served in the Swiss Army. It also gives you like a preparation for the Swiss Guard. And so after that, the application process goes through a series of questions, interviews, of tests, psychological tests, and when they give you the yes to join the Swiss Army, they then invite you to come to Rome, and then you do 2 months of training. So in the first month, you start with the formal training. So what it is that we do, what our job is here in the Vatican as a Swiss Guard, knowing the people that we work with, and all of those things that we need to know in terms of security for the Pope, for the palace, and of course in the future, if we'd like to also being able to protect him in a sort of close protection service. And then the second month would be one where we go back to Switzerland to have self-defense training, to have formation in terms of rights that we have as Swiss Guards, of a psychological formation. And basically, it's more of the hands-on training that we get there.
So basically, how long was the training? Kumbaga.
For us, well, for me, I've already done the first month when I'm currently serving now. But in October, I will be back in Switzerland so that I can do the second month of training. So it's only 2 months, and then everything else is like it's on the job training. So you learn while you do it.
Wow, that's interesting. So, in few words, how rigorous the process or the training was?
The training. I can say that it wasn't easy. The training. At times it was very tedious for us to start the day in the morning at 7 or at 8 and then finish at 8 or at 9 p.m. in the evening. There were times there that it was very difficult for us to stay concentrated, but I think that, especially me and my comrades, we were really able to push through that month. And in that month, we learned a lot of things. We have gained the necessary components to become a Swiss Guard. And of course, with that, we're now serving in the Vatican.
Yeah. Now, speaking of lessons, what special or particular lessons that you are getting now that you are a Swiss Guard? Lessons in life, lessons in general, lessons in uplifting our faith.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting question. I'd say that from what I got from my training, it's a lot. It has a lot to do with communication. Communicating with my colleagues, communicating with the guests that we receive in the palace, communicating with the tourists that come to us to ask us questions or even just ask for a picture. It's really very diverse when it comes to communication, and I think that as Swiss Guards, we especially have to learn how to communicate to each and every one. And for the faith, of course, being here is already a very big thing. So I think what I can learn here is much more bigger than what I experienced back in Switzerland, back in the Philippines. You really get to see the big persons that work around our faith. Aside from the Pope, of course, we see him every now and then, but especially when you get to see the cardinals that are leading the congregations, especially, for example, Cardinal Tagle. It's very inspiring, of course, to see them work in the same faith and see us working together.
Yeah, you've mentioned Cardinal Tagle, Baste or Sebastian. So you are the second Filipino who's been in Swiss Guard. I mean, the first one was, I think, Vincent, but you are the first full-blooded.
Yes.
How was the environment in your respective comrades when it comes to Filipinos? Because I know Filipinos are well known when it comes to our faith. We are the biggest Catholic nation in Asia. But how was the Filipino there when they found out that another Filipino is serving the Pope, serving the palace as a Swiss Guard?
So in the beginning, I wasn't really allowed to talk about it, as it wasn't official yet. But I think as soon as we passed the training here, word soon spread around, not just the Vatican, but also Rome. And when I meet people, especially Filipinos here in Rome, I don't usually like to mention that I'm a Swiss Guard, like specifically, not to brag, but I like to just tell them during our conversations that yes, I actually do serve in the Vatican as a Swiss Guard, and when they know about that, when they find out about that, then they become really glad to know that there is a Filipino. And regarding the Filipinos, there are a lot of Filipinos working in the Vatican, but not as many working as Swiss Guards. So that's also a big thing that I realized here. And seeing the faces of the people glow, I guess from them being happy to know, or being also proud to know that there is a Filipino representative here in the Swiss Guards. I think it's really something that also inspires me in my service.
Yeah. Nagpang-abot ba kayo ni Vincent? Because as far as I remember, Vincent became a member, more than 2 years ago? Nagpang-abot
Yes.
pa ba kayo ngayon?
Opo. Actually, he's still serving now, but as of now, we haven't been able to talk as much yet because I'm in a different level of competence as him. So he has a higher competence, of course, because he's been here longer, and I'm just in the basic competence here. So it depends on where we are engaged, where we are deployed in our post, and then I've seen him once or twice, maybe.
What special trait of being a Filipino that bring honor to you as a Swiss Guard? I mean, ano yung mga katangian natin bilang Pilipino na talagang nadala mo dyan bilang Swiss Guard?
Okay, interesting question. For me, I guess I have to say it's the faith for me, because it really is something that I grew up with in the Philippines, but also in Switzerland, having a youth group, mostly of Filipinos, that really encouraged me in my faith. And I guess it's just that sense of reverence that Filipinos have towards the faith that also pushed me to become a Swiss Guard. But all in all, it's really just the fact that I was able to gain, or I was able to serve in the army, in the Swiss Army, and then through that, I'm also able to serve the Swiss Guard.
Mm-hmm. Now let's talk about the Pope. I mean, Pope Francis visited the Philippines once, and when we did the coverage, talaga nakaka-starstruck siya. I mean, kayo, kumusta? How was it, seeing the Pope almost every day? And, how was it working and protecting him? Nai-starstruck pa ba kayo sa kanya? Ikaw, lalo na, parang, this is Pope Francis. I mean, may ganun ka pa rin bang feeling?
Of course, for me, the first time I saw him was during the first Sunday we arrived here in Rome. So, I mean, the fact that I've never been to Rome and I've never seen the Pope, the first time that I saw him was during a mass that he co-celebrated with. And seeing him, of course, back then, that was in June, so he was already in a wheelchair. Seeing him for the first time, it really stirred up a few emotions inside of me. Finally getting to see the person, but the most important person in our faith that is here right now. And of course, it's something that I like to cherish whenever I see him. Although, honestly, it really depends on what service we do. I rarely see him, but when I do, it's always an honor to see the person that we are serving for, the vicar of Christ.
Yeah. Ito na lang, Sebastian, just to wrap this up. What would you want to tell to, every Filipino who wants to serve God in every aspect that they can?
I guess I'll just follow it up with they should serve it in every aspect that they can, and they shouldn't be afraid to show their faith, especially when it comes to living the faith. There really has to be no fear of showing that you are a Christian, you are a Catholic, And I think if you really do that, if you really follow through with that fearlessness in faith, then God will really bring things to you for being so fearless, so loyal to Him.
With that, thank you so much, Baste, or Mr. Eviota, for your time. And we're so proud of you, and congratulations on being a Swiss Guard.
Thank you.